Good afternoon. Link Smith, President of the MOAA Public Affairs and Communication Professional Virtual Chapter. We are going to go over to our Speakers Bureau Chair, Captain Kevin Wensing, United States Navy retired, who will introduce our speaker with questions and answers to follow. Sir, the floor is yours.
Link, thank you very much and welcome everybody. Great to see a great coast to coast representation of MOA on the call here today. So thank you very much. And I'm very happy to have Andrew Huber, who's a terrific guy working at the Library of Congress and the Veterans History Project, join us today. I think I met Andrew, gosh, probably maybe 6 or 7 years ago. As you guys know, I'm a tennis nut, and Andrew did an oral history with the great tennis coach, legendary Nick Bollettieri, and we all got together for a lunch afterwards. So, but the Veterans History Project does a great job. And Andrew, we just want to kind of turn it over to you, and you can kind of go through your presentation, talk about what you do, and we can help spread the word and what you have, if anything special planned, maybe for America 250. And then after you do your presentation, we'll give you a few questions, a few hard ones. All right.
All right, that sounds great. Thank you so much for having me. It is my absolute pleasure to be here speaking with all of you. I'll start right off with our America 250 because we are actually doing a few different things. Actually, tonight is our kickoff of the Veterans History Project America 250 activities with our, so every Thursday night, the Library of Congress does what's called Live at the Library, where we keep the library open until 9 p.m. We have a cash bar, and every week it's a different department's turn to do programming. And today is our turn, and we are kicking off our America 250 activities with Veterans History Project Trivia Night at the library. We've got over 250 people RSVP'd for that, so that's pretty cool. We are also doing a 25 blog post series documenting the history of the Veterans History Project. That's going to be throughout the next probably 6 months or so. We are having a gala for all of our major supporters over the years here at the library in May. And there's going to be various activities across the country, including some of the ones that I am spearheading in Kansas City, Wichita, and Abilene, Kansas, in celebration of the D-Day anniversary as well. So definitely, if you are interested in Library of Congress and Veterans History Project America 250 activities, check out our blog. That's the Folklife Today blog at the Library of Congress, and then our social media as well. There will also be stuff being added throughout the year as we plan new programming. Can I get the first slide, please? The Library of Congress Veterans History Project. Basically, what I'm going to do today is just sort of a brief overview of the program, our history, who we are, what we do, how people use us, and finally, how you all can participate because we are a volunteer-driven program. The story of the Veterans History Project is pretty cool. Representative Ron Kind was at a family barbecue, and his father, a World War II veteran, was talking about his military experience. And Representative Kind had his son, who was only about 2 or 3 years old, and he was listening to his father's grandfather talk about this World War II experience. But because he was so young, he really didn't understand it. Representative Kind knew he probably wouldn't remember much of it. And he was worried, what if something happens to my dad before my son is old enough to listen to him speak firsthand about these incredible experiences that he had in the military? So what he did was he went and he got the family camcorder back. This was back in 1999. So he slung it over his shoulder and recorded his dad talking about his World War II experience. And he realized, well, wait a minute. If this is good for my family, this is good for every family across the country who's got a veteran. So he went back to DC and he introduced the legislation that created the Veterans History Project. And in that legislation is our mission, which is to collect, preserve, and make accessible the personal accounts of American war veterans so that future generations may hear directly from them and better understand their selfless service. So what that means to me and to everybody else at the Veterans History Project is, you can go and look in a history book or open a Wikipedia article and you can read about the wars that America has fought. You can read about the battles that were part of those wars. You can read about, a handful of people who fought in those battles, usually officers such as yourselves, Medal of Honor recipients, those kind of people. But what you're not going to get from a Wikipedia page or a history book are the individual stories of the millions of veterans in both wartime and peacetime who have taken that oath to defend their country, who have served in just an unimaginable number of different ways. So that's what the Veterans History Project is for, is, from the lowliest private to the five-star general and everything in between, we want everybody's story because we believe that every veteran has a story that is unique to their experience and that's important to learn from, so that we can document that history. So we have people who you definitely would have read about in history books. Up there, you can see we've got one of the Navajo code talkers. We all learned about them in school. We've got the kind of people you'd expect for a military oral history project, fighter pilots. But what we have that you probably wouldn't expect are all of the other stories. Down in the bottom left corner is one of my absolute favorite stories. That's Wendy Cram. He was a champion skier in Vermont in the 1940s, and he was actually going to represent America in the Winter Olympics when they were canceled because of the war. So instead of going to the Olympics, he raised his right hand and volunteered for the Army. And the Army, in a rare instance of doing exactly what it should have, sent him to Camp Hale, Colorado, and to join the 10th Mountain Division. And he became a ski instructor, teaching troops how to ski in anticipation of the invasion of the Italian Alps in the Italian campaign. He actually deployed with the troops that he trained. He was shot and injured almost immediately. He was only in Italy for 2 weeks, and then sent back to Leadville, to Camp Hale, where he spent the rest of the war as an instructor and didn't deploy again. But that's the kind of story that you're never going to read about in the history books, but, is really interesting to have here at the Veterans History Project. So the way that we collect these stories is primary sources. Every single collection, and we have over 130,000 of them, is an individual veteran's primary source experience. This is firsthand material, and it is mostly oral history interviews. Somebody sitting down with a veteran and talking about their experience, and recording that either on audio or video. But we also accept original correspondence, letters written to or from veterans during their service, original photographs taken by or of veterans during their service, original artwork created by veterans either during their service or documenting their service afterwards, and then diaries, journals, and memoirs created by veterans either during or after their service. And while we have the most oral history interviews, we absolutely love it when veterans donate these letters or these photos or especially these diaries, because when we're doing these oral histories, we're talking to veterans who are talking about things that happened 10, 20, 30, in the case of World War II, now 75, 80 years ago. And, memories fade, details get lost, things get hazy, things get exaggerated, made up sometimes, and that's fine. That's all part of oral history. However, when you've got those letters or those photos or those diaries that were being created as history was happening, we got the most complete and the most accurate picture of a veteran's service. So in terms of who can participate with VHP, to tell your own story, all you have to do is be a U.S. veteran. There is no other qualification. You do not have to have deployed. You do not have to have seen combat. If you did your duty to the U.S. military, and that is not only the main branches, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, it is also the Coast Guard, the Merchant Marines, and the U.S. Public Health Service personnel as well who are eligible to participate. You can be an officer, you can be enlisted, you can be commissioned, you can be drafted, you can be anything, any of the above. Again, if you are a U.S. veteran, you are not only allowed to participate, you are encouraged to participate. You do not have to be a veteran to interview a veteran. Anybody in 10th grade or above can actually sit down with a veteran and have them tell their story. So that means that you can have people, who aren't veterans going out into their communities or in their families talking to these veterans and then contributing to our body of knowledge by sending us those interviews that they do with people in their family or their community. And it used to be that veterans had to be alive to tell their own story. A few years ago, Congress passed the Gold Star Families Voices Act, which allows a parent, spouse, sibling, or child of a member of the armed forces who was either killed in action, declared missing in action, or died as a result of service-sustained injuries, can tell that story on that family member's behalf. So the really cool thing about the Veterans History Project is this is a living archive. These are not just sitting on a shelf gathering dust somewhere. They are being used every single day in 100 different ways. As of our last count, we had over 850 books written about veterans from our collections. And those are just the books with academic sources. Those are just the nonfiction books with bibliographies and works cited. There is absolutely no telling how many other sources that have been used. For instance, maybe somebody who is writing a fiction book about World War II or Vietnam and wants to know realistic information about what it was like to be there. They could have gotten inspiration from our sources, and we'd never know because, obviously you don't have to create a bibliography if you're writing a fiction book. But we have been used for everything from big budget documentaries. If you've ever seen The War or the Vietnam War by Ken Burns, pretty much every single veteran you see in there came from us. All the way down to, a grade schooler or a high schooler doing a research paper. Maybe they were assigned to read the things they carried and had to write a research paper on Vietnam, and everything in between. We have over 3 million researchers accessing our collections every single year. So if you choose to participate by telling your story or by collecting stories of other veterans, you can know that these are, going to a good place where they are, actively being used. So, of course, the first question most veterans have is, well, if I tell my story to VHP, what does that look like? What happens to my interview? Every veteran who participates by telling their story will get their own page on our website. It's going to have their photo if they provide one. It's going to have their collections material. In this case, it was a videotaped oral history that is available and accessible by anyone with an internet connection, and brief service history, things like what branch you served in, what units you served with, what battles or wars you fought in. And the cool thing is that all of this service history is cross-referenced and linked. So this is just a screenshot, but if you were on the actual page, you could click on each one of these different things. So for instance, if you clicked on USS Thatch as one of his service units, it would take you to all of our collections for people who served aboard the USS Thatch. So it's a great way to find people who served with your unit or in the same locations or time periods that you might have served in. And the main ways that people use our collections in terms of research are either accessing what we call serving our voices. These are our online exhibits. We've got about 50 of these, each one revolving around a different theme. Themes like Buffalo Soldiers, Native American veterans, chaplains, helicopter pilots. And if you go to each one of these online exhibits, you'll click on it and it'll serve you generally 15 to 20 of our collections that we feel are best represent those themes. Those are going to be our richest collections, ones with, incredible stories, ones with lots of multimedia things like photos and letters to browse through. Again, these are all accessible to anybody on our website. We also have research guides if you are looking to research specific things. We have research guides for each conflict. We also have research guides for different grade levels. We have some really cool story maps. These are interactive exhibits where you take the story of one individual veteran and it shows on a map all of the different locations they served, and you can click on them and it'll show you all of the different things that happened to that veteran, in that location. And then primary source sets, these are more for educators, but we have primary source sets for all the way from elementary school through college. So if you are an educator yourself, or if you have an educator in your family, these are a great resource for using our collections as well. And then we also have a searchable database where all of that information that I mentioned, units, service locations, ships, all that is searchable as well. So that is how people use us as a research archive. But we are almost 100% volunteer driven. We don't have the resources or the staff time to actually go out and conduct each one of those 135,000 interviews that we've done. So we rely on volunteers in the community to go out and interview the veterans in their life in their community and send us the recordings. That is the main way that we grow our body of knowledge and increase our number of collections. And the only thing that you need to do if you want to participate by interviewing a veteran is finding a veteran who is willing to share their experiences. Obviously, you are all veterans. That is going to be no problem for you. Some sort of recording equipment. Most people just use the phone that you probably have in your pocket right now. You can also use something like an iPad, or if you have a dedicated video camera, even better. But basically anything that records audio or video in any kind of modern format, a quiet room to conduct the interview, and a VHP field kit. Those field kits are available either on our website or if you want a paper copy, we are more than happy to send you one. And what those field kits have are background information on VHP, detailed instructions on how to conduct the interview, sample interview questions, so you don't even have to make up your own questions to ask, although we do highly encourage that you do, especially if you personally know the veteran and a little bit about their experience, rules and guidelines, which are super simple, submission instructions, which are also very simple, literally just send the recording and the forms to us. And then, of course, we are the government. We do require that you and the veteran fill out a few forms as well. The forms are very simple, self-explanatory. We've got a biographical data form. That's where we get all of that service history. We've got a veteran's release form and an interviewer's release form. One thing that makes us unique is that when you sign our release form, you are not signing away any rights whatsoever. The veterans retain all copyrights, all story rights, all likeness rights. The only thing that the release forms do is give the Veterans History Project permission to make those interviews available for fair use purposes. You're all communications officers. You all know everything about fair use. I don't have to explain that to you. But that is one thing that really distinguishes us from other programs is that we aren't taking ownership of anything. The veteran retains ownership of everything. I did mention we have a few rules. Really simple, only two real rules. Rule number one is what we call our 30-20-10 rule, and that is to establish a collection, we need one of the following, either 30 minutes or more of recorded oral history, or if the veteran is writing about their experiences instead of talking about them, 20 pages of written manuscript. That can be single or double spaced, doesn't matter. Or if the veteran is establishing a collection using only primary source materials like photos, or they have to have at least 10 individual pieces of those. Once you check one of those boxes, the rest don't matter. So if you do 30 minutes of recorded oral history and you want to donate one photo, that's fine because you already qualified with the 30 minutes of oral history. If you want to write 20 pages of written memoir and can only do a 5-minute interview or don't want to do an interview at all, that's fine too, because you already qualified with those 20 pages of written manuscript. So you just have to do one of those things. Once you've done one of those things, your collection is established and you can add as much or as little else as you want. Also, once you establish that collection, it is open and established forever. So if 10 years down the line, you think of some other stuff that you want to include, you can send us a quick 5-minute, addition to your interview. You can send us some photos if you want, however you want to do that. So again, you just have to do one of these once, and then after that, you can add whatever else you want. And then other than that, the only other rule we have is that when you send us an oral history interview, it has to be on either a CD, DVD, or flash drive. We do have to have that physical piece of media. We are working on a portal where you can upload this material directly to us. It is almost ready. It will be ready government soon, which could be months or years from now. But it is in the final stage. We've been working on this for several years now, and hopefully we'll be joining the 21st century and allowing people to upload their materials directly to us soon. So that is the Veterans History Project in a nutshell. One of the main ways that we increase participation is by hosting workshops with organizations like yourself. This is sort of a much more expanded version of what we're doing here right now. They last about either an hour to an hour and a half, and they go over everything you need to know on how to conduct these interviews and submit them to the Library of Congress. Oral history best practices, how to craft engaging interview questions, what to do if a veteran experiences a post-traumatic stress episode, really, literally anything you could possibly need. So if you are interested in doing a workshop like that, just send me an email, ahub@loc.gov. That can be for MOAA. That can be for any organizations you are also a part of, American Legion, VFW, anything like that. Also, if you have at least 25 or more people who are interested in doing that workshop, we can actually send a professional oral historian to your location to conduct that workshop at no cost to you. That's a more in-depth one. That's about 90 minutes. And that actually includes practical exercises and practice interviews as well. However, if you have 25, less than 25, then we do it online, and that's about an hour. If you are ever interested, one of the things I absolutely love organizations do is plan community interview events. This is when we set up shop at a library or community center or American Legion Hall, and we invite any veteran from the community who wants to come in that day and be interviewed. We conduct all the training of the volunteers who will be there. If you are local to DC, we can even come out and help you with it. But that is a really fun thing to do. You get to meet all sorts of cool and interesting veterans in your community, and you get to listen to their stories and know that you have, really made a difference not only to that veteran in their life, but also to, our country's history by providing those interviews to us at the Library of Congress. But other than that, the only thing left is to go out and hopefully start interviewing those veterans in your life, in your community, in your MOAA chapter. And if you want any assistance doing that, if you have any questions whatsoever, it is literally my job to help you do that. So again, my email is right there, ahub@loc.gov. Feel free to shoot me an email, ask any questions anytime. And speaking of questions, if you have any questions, I am more than happy to take those now.
Well, fantastic. Thank you so much, Andrew. What an amazing program you guys have established there at the Library of Congress. And also, if people haven't been to the Library of Congress building, I think it's the most beautiful building in Washington, D.C. Absolutely gorgeous. So I encourage everybody to be there. I was going to say, I'm not sure, and some of the other MOAA members might correct me. MOAA had an event earlier this year called Total Force Plus at Gaylord National Harbor, and they're planning another one. Was Library of Congress, was your program part of the Total Force Plus this past year?
No, it happened during the shutdown. We had hoped to get
Oh,
on,
it's right. Yeah,
but
it's right. That shutdown.
we were not able to do anything during that time.
Well, there's probably a couple of people on this call that can get you hooked up to be part of the next Total Force event, which will be, I think, in January of 2027. So hopefully you can be part of that. Oh, February of 2027. I'm going to open the floor to other people. I did have one question. And in fact, I noticed today Mission Barbecue is having free lunch on the March 29th for all Vietnam veterans. And I was going to ask Andrew, have you ever had your crew go over to Mission Barbecue when they're having like a lunch at one of those places, or have they partnered with Library of Congress at all?
So we're not allowed to do corporate partnerships because that would provide the appearance of us endorsing a particular product or service. However, I will say that when I've done interview events, Mission Barbecue has always been very generous in donating things to not us, but the sponsors, the libraries or the schools that are hosting us for our events. So we don't do anything with them directly, but they are a fantastic partner for these sorts of events and for veterans in general.
Fantastic. Thank you. Well, and I was going to say, I'll open the floor to other people. I've got a couple questions, but I'll let other people go ahead and take a crack at you.
This is Jay Garbus. I have a question. How do you verify that the person's actually been in the military?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So unfortunately, we don't have the resources to go fact check every claim and check every story. We take the veteran at their word. However, if it is determined that there is a stolen valor, then we will pull their collection and take them out of our archive. We do have a couple people who regularly, as just as things not they're not employees of ours, they're not official volunteers of ours. They just do this because it's important to them. Who will look through our collections for stolen valor and every few weeks sort of send us an email saying, "Hey, I found this and that." So we are regularly pulling collections that are flagged, but we don't have any official process. The way that we see it is it's a unfortunate part of oral history that sometimes you just have to take what they say at face value until proven otherwise.
Thank you very much. And I had a couple of follow-on questions. Earlier, you talked about working with Ken Burns, for example, a big budget.
Yeah. So unfortunately, I didn't get to work with him because this was before I came aboard at the Veterans History Project. But from everybody I've talked to who worked with him, they said he was just a joy to work with, a consummate professional. What he did was he worked with our research librarians. He said, "Hey, I want veterans from, when he was doing the war, he said, I want veterans from World War II. The sections of my documentary are going to be saying, this, and this. If you can find veterans that fit this criteria, so our research librarians went into our archives. They found the collections that they thought best fit his criteria. And then because it's Ken Burns, he actually got in contact with those veterans and reshot each of them on, with his personal, professional level of the standard that he needed for his documentary. Because I will say that especially with our World War II veterans, most of the video interviews we have from that era are done on VHS or VHS-C cassette. The quality just isn't that great, especially, blown up on a big HD TV. So he found the veterans from our collections that he wanted to use, and then he went out. And one thing I will also say is that we do not, even for Ken Burns, we do not ever give out the veteran's contact info. So if somebody like Ken Burns wants to get in contact with them for something like a reshoot, we have their information in our database, which is kept secure. We will reach out to the veteran and say, "Hey, Ken Burns wants to use you for his movie. Here is their contact information. You can reach out to them and say yes or no, or work out whatever deal you want." But at no point are we giving out the veteran's contact info to anybody outside the Veterans History Project.
Follow-on question here. Talk about our high schools, not only some samples, but also the work you do with them.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the first schools I worked with was Eastern High School, right here in DC on Capitol Hill. We worked with their 10th grade history department, and they went out and interviewed a bunch of their veteran faculty, coaches, and advisors. I work with Teaching with Primary Sources every year with their teacher fellowship here at the library. I work with Teaching with Primary Sources with the state chapters across the country, most notably Virginia and Montana, do presentations to their high schools every year. Let's see, we have schools, Elko High School in Pennsylvania. Every year they come and donate the interviews that they've done that year in person. They do a field trip to DC. Really, there is, as many ways to interact with high schools and participate with high schools as there are high schools out there. The U.S. Navy Memorial's Sea Service internship. They take high schoolers from across the country every year to come to DC, and doing VHP interviews is a part of that. Just any way that a high school, wants to interact with us, we are more than happy to make that happen.
Andrew, Kevin here again. Do you have any, I was thinking 35 years ago was the liberation of Kuwait. And I think in September or so, September, October, the Gulf War Memorial is going to be dedicated on the National Mall. Are you having any plans or any, to do something on special on the Gulf War with the 35th anniversary?
I'm not personally familiar with what we're doing. However, I do know we were involved with the World War II Memorial. We have a great relationship with the National Park Service. the Smithsonian, with the Interior Department. Actually got to interview former director Sams a couple of years ago, which was very cool. So yeah, we are almost always involved with that sort of thing. So even though I don't know exactly what we're doing off the top of my head, I'm sure we're doing something. And if you have a connection with that, please let me know, and I would be glad to jump in and see
Yeah,
what I can
I'll
do.
follow up with those guys and make sure they're, if they are great. If they're not, we'll make sure you're connected. Okay.
Andrew, we would like to thank you for your time this afternoon with our MOAA Public Affairs and Communication Professional Virtual Chapter.
Well, thank you very much. It was an absolute honor to be here, and what a fantastic organization you have.